Everyone inherits a name, but few carry on a legacy. For Brian Proctor, growing up as Bob Proctor's son wasn't a shadow. It was a light he learned to live in and live up to. He was there in the early days of personal development going digital, the mind behind the marketing that helped take a message global.
When I came out with My Father Knew the Secret, I self-published that book. I had talked to a couple of publishers, and I told them some goals that I had around the book on some sales, and they all thought I was a little bit crazy. And I thought, well, then you're not the publisher for me.
Brian Proctor didn't just build a business. He built bridges between purpose and platforms. And at home, he built something even more powerful. A family rooted in vision, gratitude, and presence. Brian's story isn't just a reflection of who raised him. It's an invitation to raise others as a father, grandfather, and mentor. His legacy now includes generational wisdom passed down. From best-selling author to transformational guide, Brian and his wife Corey now lead Kelly Proctor Co., a mission grounded not in complexity, but in simple truths practiced daily. Their program, Proctors Principles, empowers others to trust intuition, act with integrity, and manifest their future.
We would hit many moments in life where we're just floating. We're not going towards anything. We're not driven towards anything. We're just drifting through life.
He's a son, a partner, a quiet pioneer, and perhaps the most grateful man in the world. In this episode, we uncover the story behind the strategy, the wisdom behind the wins, and the heart behind the heritage.
Richard Bliss Brooke here. We are live.
We sit here today with none other than
Mark Victor Hansen,
Bob Proctor.
This is Kendra Hall,
Sonia Stringer,
Jack Canfield,
DeWitt Jones,
James Clear,
Les Brown.
Hey everybody, Richard Bliss Brooke here, and I have, a very special, heartfelt, feels like in a strange way, family here as my guest today. I have none only but Mr. Brian Proctor, the son of Bob Proctor, here as my guest today from the Puget Sound in Washington. Brian, say hello to everybody.
Well, hello. Thank you, Richard. It is great to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this interview, Brian. I don't know a lot about you, but I'm excited to learn about you. I just went through your book and read it word for word, but I got through all 12 principles, and what a phenomenal reminder of some of the great principles of success. We'll talk about the book, but I just want the audience to know, and you're so tied in with your father. You don't try to hide that in any way. I think you embrace it in an honorable way, and you're so fortunate, audience. I mean, just imagine if you were raised by Bob Proctor. Do you think you'd have your act together? Do you think you'd have your thoughts organized in the right direction? Do you think you'd be able to figure out how to get from point A to point B? Do you think you'd be able to handle adversity and distractions? And oh my gosh, what a gift. So that's my first question, Brian. I mean, you could probably go on for hours, but what was it like to be raised by Bob Proctor?
The honest answer, it was great. He was a magnificent father. We had a very special relationship. I was fortunate I got to work with him for close to the last 30 years. But being raised by him as a father was a wonderful experience. I know not everybody gets that with their parents, but it was a wonderful experience. And I look back on it, Richard, and I think, he was given the book Think and Grow Rich in October of 1961. Well, I was born in December of 1961. So I was literally there for the whole ride. And I think while he was reprogramming his mind and studying and learning this material, he was programming mine right from the start. So I had the gift of Bob Proctor as a father, teaching me that way of being just by being.
Yeah. It's just almost hard to imagine that, just every day in every way you see everything he's doing. And the last 30 years being involved in his digital marketing I mean, you kind of spearheaded his whole digital marketing programs, right? So you get to see everything he's doing, all of his presentations, all his distinctions, all his teachings over and over and over again. It's just an extraordinary gift. And so I'm curious if you just maybe take that to a next level. From a practical standpoint, how have you seen that play out in maybe your childhood, but maybe your adult life? Like specifically, have you seen some of the principles that he's given you be tested in your life? And how did that play out?
Yeah, I think, we're all tested. None of us have a perfect life. We have issues, we have problems, things arise. I will be the first to say I feel like I lived a charmed life, having Bob Proctor as a father, but that didn't protect me from adversity. None of us are immune from adversity. And I think the big thing that I learned from my father over time was that adversity just is that. It's something to learn from. It's not something to let control your life. And it's something that you can move from and learn and experience from. We were talking earlier about a situation that, where things can go and it's maybe not such a great situation. My father had a phrase that he used all the time when things weren't going right. He would just say, "It is what it is." And he would never worry about it. He would never stress over it. And he would shift his attention to the positive. What can he do? And I think that was probably one of the best gifts he gave me. Whenever I've had bad times, bad things happen to me, I kind of look at it like, it is what it is. Here's an experience. Okay, what can I do now? How can I get focused on the present moment and make things better now, rather than dwell on the negative? That was a gift. And that was something I learned from a very young age.
And that's a couple of the principles in this book, is stay in the present and what's the action you can take now. Just beautiful principles. So this might be a tough question, but I don't know. I'm curious. I wonder if the audience is curious. So when we see Bob Proctor, we see the edited version, right? We see the produced edited version. Or if we see him live, last time I saw him live was about 5 years ago, I think in Toronto, maybe 6. He was on fire. He was, of course, at his best, because as stage performers, we learn, doesn't matter what's going on, right? You could have all kinds of stuff going on back here, but when the lights come on and somebody says, "And Bob Proctor," you got to bring it. And you got to bring all of it, right? So when we see people like your dad at their best, well, we just sort of form the idea that, well, that's who they are in entirety. But growing up with him, there had to also be kind of a liability there, because I don't imagine he was the Bob Proctor that we see all the time. And you would see the Bob Proctor that wasn't the stage Bob Proctor at the same time that you would see how he presented himself. So did you experience that conflict, and what did you do with it?
So there was actually no conflict around that. What you saw on stage is who he was, which is amazing. I know you've met him privately off stage, and you probably saw the same kind of personality.
He was, yes.
Now, if I was to say there's anything different from a family member point of view, he was much quieter in private, and he was more introspective. He was a studier. He thrived on studying. His business was his hobby, and when he was at home, he might have been a little quieter. He wasn't the Bob Proctor that had the crazy stage presence, but he still lived as if he was that not as if he was that person. He still lived from those principles. He was always looking to teach. He was always looking to share. He was always looking to study. I shared with somebody else not that long ago, the last couple of weeks of his life, I spent, well, the last 6 months of his life, I pretty much spent most of it in Toronto, just by his side, helping him in whatever way I could. But the last couple of weeks, he hit a point where he couldn't really read. He wasn't able to stay awake a long time. He still wanted me to read to him books that he was studying. That's the private Bob Proctor. He was what you saw on stage. And even when he knew he was dying, he still wanted to learn. He had that thirst for knowledge that he taught. And he never thought he knew it all. And that was something he always taught us. So there was nothing to get over with him. What you saw on stage was who he was. And my brother, you had asked Raymond, my brother, what it was like having Bob Proctor as a father, and he said, "Well, every dinner was a seminar." So, that's the way Raymond saw it. He was who he was.
Yeah, that's beautiful. One of the things that struck me when I interviewed him 4 or 5 years ago in his studio, and always struck me about his story about Think and Grow Rich, is he carried that book with him his entire life, and he referenced it every day like somebody might reference the Bible. And I found that to be such an extraordinary passion, commitment, dedication, focus, because today, when it comes to books and reading, kind of the badge of honor is, well, I read 300 books last year, or I'm reading a book a week, or I'm reading 5 books right now, and yet what's missing in that sort of ego-based badge of honor of how many books you've read is, where's the mastery of the material? Mm-hmm. Like, okay, you've read all these books, but can you teach them? Do you live them? Do you know actually what the principles are? And if you only remember 10% of what you read 3 days ago, how much good really is reading a book? But your dad studied, and he studied Think and Grow Rich every day. I mean, when I interviewed him, he had that book like right on his nightstand or the stand next to his chair, and he picked it up and answered a couple of questions by referencing the book. And such an extraordinary commitment. And so this is your second book. Your first book was My Father Knew the Secret, right?
That's it. Yes.
Is that one that the ones behind you, is that it?
That's right behind me. My Father Knew the Secret. Growing up.
So I haven't read that one. What is the storyline there besides the obvious?
Well, yeah, certainly the obvious. I talk about the last lesson that I learned from him. I share stories of growing up with him, what it was like, what he taught me, how I've used it. I personally, Richard, think I was sharing before, I live a charmed life. I live a great life. My father never gave me anything, but he gave me everything, if that makes sense. When he passed away, Linda's got the estate, and she's going to do with it whatever she will do. But I have no worries, because he taught me life and how to live it and how to do things so that you can win in life. And that book shares all of those kind of stories, everything he taught me that has gotten me to where I am today.
What's the last lesson he taught you that's in that book?
So the last lesson, and I'll be quite frank, probably the most important thing I've ever learned from him, is something that he tried to teach me forever. And he really drove it home the last few weeks of his life. And that is intuition, listening to your intuition. I have found that since his passing, I have followed my intuition to a T. I mean, without hesitation. When you get that little inkling that you should do something, that gut feeling you should do something, you do it. If you get that gut feeling that you shouldn't do it, you don't do it. And, our paradigms, our habits and our thoughts and everything else will attack intuition. Something will come to us to do, and we'll think, oh, no, you can't do that because, or why, who are you to think you could do that? And we stop ourselves from listening to our intuition. And he really taught me that if I listen to and follow my intuition perfectly, I will be guided divinely. One of the things he said to me, he says, when we pray, we're speaking to God. And he said, intuition is God speaking to us. And that lesson really struck home. And I've done things, Richard, that quite frankly have been very uncomfortable, been a little scary, but my intuition told me to do them. And because I did, my life is even better now. And intuition will guide you perfectly if you truly listen to it.
Yeah, trust it. And it does take courage to trust it because it's subtle, right? It's a whisper.
Yeah.
It's not banging, it's not making a lot of noise. It's not hitting your head up inside the head. It's just a whisper, and there are competing whispers. So the challenge is to figure out which one of those is looking to derail you back into your comfort zone and which one is telling you the truth.
Yeah, that's it. And it's, the one thing I learned is that the best thing to do is to really go to a quiet space and just really be quiet in the space and listen to what you're feeling, not what you're thinking. What are you feeling? That's a good way to get in touch with it.
Well, tell us about the 12 easy steps to change your life. When did you decide to write this book? And what's the intent?
So it's a funny story. When I came out with My Father Knew the Secret, I self-published that book. I had talked to a couple of publishers, and I told them some goals that I had around the book and some sales, and they all thought I was a little bit crazy. And I thought, well, then you're not the publisher for me. And so I self-published it, and it did very, very well, and it's still doing well a few years later. Because of that, I got the eyes of some publishers, and one in particular reached out, and I worked out a 3-book deal over 3 years. So this was the first book, and this book is really I distilled the 12 steps that I've used to become a success in my life. And they're not all success principles. There's just life principles as well. But I've put into that book everything that I've used personally to build quite frankly, a really wonderful life. And that's the purpose of the book, is just to show the reader, anybody that picks it up, it's just a book. A book's easy to grab a hold of. I've tried to make it conversational and very easy to read so that anybody can take these principles and start to apply them in real life right now.
Yeah, it was easy to read. And I love the way you talked about each principle. And I love the fact that each of those principles was not something esoteric or weird or strange, or I didn't have to think a lot about whether I should adopt it, because in most cases it was a reminder. And, I think that's something that's really important for us, people anyway, that have been on some kind of a journey of learning and personal development. We tend to have forgotten more than we're executing with right now. And so if we'll just remember, hey, you can't manage time, but you can manage your activities and your priorities, right? So make a list every night of the 5 things you want to do tomorrow morning and put them in priority, and don't do number 2 until you finish number 1. That sounds familiar. I don't know where I heard that before, and it's like, okay, that's pretty simple and pretty profound. Mm-hmm. And if people would just do that, right?
Yeah, I've learned that I think everybody knows what they need to do. They just don't do it. Why don't you do it? And sometimes that's all we need, is the reminder, the reason to get out and do whatever that is for you. Yeah.
I don't know if you know the answer to this question, and if you don't, fine. I'm just curious if you know, besides Earl Nightingale, mm-hmm. Who did your dad study?
So obviously Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. You talk about that book. That book today, Richard, when I hold it, I can feel my father. I mean, that is the most well-read book I have ever seen in my life. It's literally falling apart. And he never wanted it rebound because that was his partner through this whole journey for him. So certainly Napoleon Hill. He loved to study Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard, he was really big into, especially in the last few years. Book Power of Awareness was one of his big books to read. He really enjoyed that. Genevieve Behrend, Your Invisible Power. He really enjoyed reading that. The interesting thing is, he worked with Earl Nightingale for a number of years. I remember as a young boy, we moved to Chicago so that he could work with Earl. And the person he actually learned more from there was Lloyd Conant. Lloyd Conant, I mean, I remember him from a kid as like a grandfather to me. He was just such a kind man.
That's right.
Yeah, he really learned the marketing of this material because let's face it, those were the days of no internet. It was a different world. So there was lots of other people that he studied. But if I was to name one in particular, it would be Napoleon Hill in that Think and Grow Rich book. And then Neville Goddard would fall right after that. I have been to several, and I know a lot of people in the industry for sure, and I pick up tidbits from everybody. I'll tell you the one person that I'm really resonating with at this moment, anyway, Richard, is Rick Rubin. I don't know if you've read his book, A Creative Act. God, it's really interesting. And Rick Rubin, he is a unique man. For those listening or watching this, if you take a look at him, you think he's living on the side of the street. He just is who he is. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, a record producer for very serious musicians. What I love about his message is so clean and so simple that I think we all need to listen to. And this is where I've really resonated, is that we need to speak to ourselves. We need to, when he produced records, he produced them so that he would enjoy them. And he knew that if he enjoyed them, others would. And boy, that worked. And when I started, writing books and doing things, I realized that I'm not going to appeal to everybody. And I think if we try to appeal to everybody, we'll probably appeal to nobody. So when I write anything, I write it as if I'm writing it to myself. What would my younger self want to know? And so I learned that from Rick Rubin. So if I was to say one person at this exact moment, other than my father, of course, who I just grew up with, he's got an interesting take that you don't see very often in this industry.
Beautiful. What's the next book?
The next book would be probably Neville Goddard, Power of Awareness. That's kind of interesting. I've been digging into that one lately as well.
What's the next book you're going to write?
Oh, the next book I'm going to write. It's a phrase that my father used to say all the time. So it'll be probably a little bit edgier. The title of the book is Quit Screwing Around. This is your life.
I like the quit screwing around part.
Yeah, the quit screwing around. He would say that often. As a teenager boy, I heard that a lot, and even different periods in my life as an adult, I would hear that from him. And, we would hit many moments in life where we're just floating. We're not going towards anything. We're not driven towards anything. We're just drifting through life. And he would always recognize it. And he'd look at me and say, Brian, quit screwing around. Like, this is your life. What are you going for? What are you going to do? How are you going to make a difference? And he would get me zoned back in on growing and doing things. So that's what that book is going to be all about. I've heard him say it from the stage so many times. You know this. I mean, you've been on stage, however many times. You get people that come to a seminar, and you'll have some of them. I look at it, there's two camps. There's the group that come, and they'll come over and over and over, and they take the material and they actually do something with it, and you see them just taking off. Man, you love having them in the audience. And you get others that come, and they come over and over and over again, but they do nothing. Nothing changes. And we say they come for the entertainment, is really it. And to those people, that's who he'd be saying from the stage, quit screwing around. You know what you need to do. And so that's where the theme of that book is going to go.
Beautiful. I'm looking forward to that. I imagine growing up in his household, there wasn't a lot of room for, I'm just going to take a couple of years and just kind of chill and, figure stuff out and hang out and relax. And seems like always intensity, right?
Well, you wouldn't get away with anything, I can tell you that. But it was always in a good way. It was in a good way. I was never afraid to go home. It was always, yeah. Here's the interesting thing, and this is a little private nugget, but Bob Proctor, as a father, would always have you look at what you're capable of doing, how much more you can do. And he would inspire you to do more. He wouldn't scare you into doing more. It was really, it was a special thing. And, Richard, I learned that when I was a little kid. Some of my earliest memories when I was a really young boy is, bedtime and going to bed. And my father would come and he would sit on the edge of the bed and he'd put his hand on my chest. And he would start talking about my day and all the great things I did that day. And then he would start talking about if I had any problems that day. And he'd have me look for the good in whatever bad was happening. So that started when I was like really young. But here's the thing that really stuck with me. He would say to me before he was done, he always having with his hand on my chest, he said that personal connection was important. And he would say, Brian, you are capable of being, doing, or having anything you want in this life. He says, you're going to go to sleep tonight feeling great. You're going to have a good sleep. You're going to wake up in the morning with a big smile on your face, and you're going to have a wonderful day. And that's some of my earliest memories of him as a father. And that is how he brought me up. I was capable of doing anything. And I will say he was always my biggest cheerleader. When I was going after tough things, he was the first one that'd be calling me up. How are you doing towards this? That's a special thing to live with.
I can just hear the audience now going, that's not how my parents raised me. I can tell you that's not how my parents raised me either. That is phenomenal.
It was a gift. And I was able to share that gift with my kids. I remember telling that story once. I was in my father's studio and I was telling that story on a podcast. And right afterwards, my son was in the control room and he came running out and he said, Dad, I remember that. You used to call them dream packs. And I said, yeah. And now I have grandchildren and my daughter's doing that with her kids. It's just, it's life altering. And it's such a simple thing. I was doing it was probably a year and a half, 2 years ago. I was doing a podcast with a fellow who's got a very large audience, very well known. I'll keep it private, but I shared this story. And he invited me back on a couple months later. And before we started, he said to me, he said, Brian, I need to share with you something that I've done. I started doing that prayer thing with my son. And he says, my son is 16. He said, it was very uncomfortable at first. He said, I sat on the side of the bed and he says, I was kind of uncomfortable. I wasn't sure where to put my hand. He says, I just put it on his leg. And my son looked at me kind of weird. And he said, it was awkward for the first couple of times. But he said, it got to the point where his son was looking forward to that. And it was moment. And he says it changed their relationship. So age is irrelevant.
And that simple practice right there would change the world.
Yeah.
You look at all the issues that we have going on in the world, they all originate in kids just not being grounded and not having high self-esteem. And low self-esteem, doubt, worry, fear just turns into ugliness.
Right.
And what a profound child rearing act that is. I encourage all of you with children, consider taking that on and report to Brian. We'll tell you how to find him, what the results are after 2 or 3 months. So Brian, how do they find you? Where do they get this book? Is it on Amazon? Is it on your website?
Yeah, the books are all on Amazon.
Tell us about your seminar, because you have a program. I want to hear about that.
Yeah, we have a program as well that we run that we open up usually twice a year, and we run it with a group of people through it. You can find everything at brianproctor.com. It's a great program that we've developed. It's called Proctors Principles. And again, it's sharing everything that I learned from Bob Proctor as a father. We have recorded lessons that people run through, and then we do live calls twice a week that we're on with the group, answering questions, working with them, and really trying to make a difference. And it's been a joy, Richard. We're seeing people do all kinds of things that they're amazing themselves. And what I've found is like in 12 Easy Steps, you talk about being in the present moment. We can do so much more if we quit worrying about the future, quit thinking about the past, and start focusing on what can I do right here, right now. I've often shared if we just did one little thing every day towards our dream, one thing on our goal in the present moment, in a year's time, you've done 365 little things. I promise that'll add up to something large. It'll add up to something big. And that's when difference happens.
Your wife is Kelly?
Corey Kelly.
Corey Kelly. And you do this together, right? You coach together?
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been great. Corey worked with my father for, I think, a dozen years. And man, did Dad love her. She ran his consultant division. She was the executive director of his consultant division. So there was probably 2,500 coaches that she was in, she helped build their businesses. Yeah. So she's got a great perspective.
Yeah, beautiful. That sounds like a powerful program. I encourage all of you, go check it out, brianproctor.com. Brian, thank you very much for joining us and sharing with our audience. I look forward to hearing maybe some stories about people parenting different. Maybe they'll take that on for 2 or 3 months and share some of those stories with you. Thanks for joining us here.
Well, thank you, Richard. I appreciate you having me here.
Hey, everybody. This is the Richard Brooke Podcast. Share it far and wide. Thank you for joining us.